Well, Kevin, thank you. And for such a compelling intro, that's probably going to allow me to set that bar a little bit lower. So thank you very much for the kind words. I can tell you it's humbling to stand here and think about some of the things that Kevin's talking about. Our organization has been through so much in a short amount of time, relatively speaking. We have changed so many things. And there's people that are positively and negatively affected by that every single day. So what I'm going to attempt to do is walk through a little bit, kind of back through that timeline, give you a little bit of history of myself, the organization, and then kind of weave through the courage of change. That's what we're going to talk about today. In fact, I've got a slide right here. As I think back on the organization and the history of the organization, we're a Williams company, and so big part of Tulsa's history, the incredible Williams organization that spawned so many other companies. In January of 2012, Williams decided to spin WPX out of the organization and form its own entity. And the idea was very simple. Hey, let's take this E&P organization and let them stand on their own. That way they can really compete with other companies in Tulsa and really around the globe. And not have the overhang or the shadow of this much larger organization that gets pulled in many other different directions. So, very noble pursuit, and the idea was very simple, and let's go do this. I can tell you it was really a significant challenge once WPX spun out to really stand on our own and not have the benefit of a much larger company that maybe covered up some of the bumps in the road along the way. And when we were down 1 month, we could lean on another part of the company to kind of pick us up. As you can imagine, there was a beautiful portfolio effect that happens in that kind of environment. So in 2014, the board of directors decided we need a more significant change than just being our own independent company. We need a new management team. And so, talk about courage to change. The board of directors decided to make a change at the CEO level. That is difficult, as you can imagine. So they went out on a search, interviewed people all over, up and down from within the organization, but certainly around the industry, and came across Rick Moncrief. Rick had been working with Continental immediately before, but has a long history with Burlington Resources, and wooed him into the organization. That was a real pivot point for the organization. And so what Rick came in, a fresh set of ideas, fresh set of eyes, whole lot of motivation, very compelling individual, fully grounded in his ethics and values, and really ready to carry the flag. But he couldn't do it alone. So he looked around the organization and really started bringing in confidants and really challenging people. You think about some of the change. Think about the change for Rick, to take that step, leave a very well-oiled machine in Continental, and think about, what the possibilities were, leaving that organization into a company that was really self-aware but very much kind of a stressed environment. So Rick made the move. He started thinking about, well, how do we, what are those opportunities? What are the things that we can really continue to improve on and do better? And so he started, looking for the cultural wins. And actually, Rick, I think, stood on the stage a year or so ago and spoke to this organization about the Code of the West. And that was kind of his rallying cry around, here is our value structure, how we're going to approach things, and how we're going to really go after the way we do business. Not the tactics, but here's the strategy, here's the culture, here's what we do as an organization. So Rick joined the organization, started making very significant changes, brought me along a few months later, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my history in a second, but really started putting the pieces together, and really, I joined October of 2014. And so we come together, lots of great energy, lots of excitement. Again, fresh set of eyes are a wonderful, wonderful thing to any challenging situation. And so we can see, man, this is a quick fix. Here's a win, here's an opportunity. And so we started really thinking about, just in the first few weeks of what could we do to really set the bar higher and really achieve some big things that we needed to do. October turned to November. November was a very important meeting over in OPEC, and they decided to raise, not lower production, but actually raise production. It sent a shockwave through the industry. Okay, oil price at the time was hovering around $90 a barrel, and in the coming months, it would fall to 50, then 40, ultimately down to $26 a barrel. So you think about what that means, try and relate that a little bit to maybe other organizations. Maybe you own a restaurant, you're running a business, you hire a great chef, you build a wonderful menu, you find the right location, you build the right ambiance for your restaurant. This is your dream. And you think, you know what, this is gonna be a really classy, really swanky place. $25 a meal is our price target. This is gonna be how we set this whole thing up. So you build the wine list, you build the tables and the decorations, and you invest in this knowing that that's gonna be your price point, okay? Then one day, in a flash, that $25 meal, you're only allowed to charge $6 for. Ooh, that kind of changes things, because it cost me $18.50 to make that meal. So as you would in a restaurant or any other business, we had to get really, really serious about how do we get costs under control, really change the game as an industry. I can tell you, we had some really interesting conversations just in those first few weeks about, is this an opportunity or is this a challenge? There's lots of challenges. It's easy to identify the challenges, but we also saw the amazing opportunities. And the opportunity was clear. All those things that we had been talking about in the preceding weeks, these are the things that we need to accomplish. Now we have essentially a cloud, the cover of darkness, where we can do all of these things kind of in 2x or 3x speed. So let's go get aggressive about fixing the portfolio. Let's get really aggressive about fixing the organization. Let's get really, really aggressive and think about the processes and how we do things. And so we did. The first step, very important, was really thinking about what do we want to be as a company. And you think, okay, you're an oil and gas company. You produce oil and gas, they turn it to energy, and you power every other industry, right? Yep, we do that. That's important, that's the fundamental. But within that, we have to become a specialist. We have to become really, really good at something. What is that going to be? So we did a little soul searching. At the time, the organization owned assets in Argentina, in Colombia, in Marcellus, that's Pennsylvania, North Dakota, Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and I'm probably missing about 4 or 5 other states. We were really, really spread out, very diverse, okay? So we're going to be really good at international players. If so, let's make sure we have the best international accounting team, the best international law team, and let's go down the list and figure out what is that specialty that we really need to get. No, I don't think that's it. Well, maybe it's gas. Maybe we really need to understand gas versus oil. We were already about 90% of our equivalent production was gas at the time, and so we're already halfway there, 90% there. Maybe we really embrace that and run with that. So we thought about what's the future of natural gas prices? How do you embrace that? Is that really where we want to push our chips in? You know what, we probably want more of a balanced approach. So we looked over towards oil. And we started thinking about scale. How many assets is really the right number of assets for a company of this size? Well, 9 is too many. So let's kind of start working our way down. What are the obvious divestiture candidates, and how do we get to something that's more reasonable? So we started working, kind of thinking through some of those things. There was lots of other kind of foundational principles, but one of the things that was incredibly important in those early conversations was culture. What do we want to be as a company? Not just assets, not just the business itself, but how do we want to approach it? And I think one of the things Rick and I agreed on from the very beginning was we needed to understand what we do as a business. Okay, I apologize if you've heard this story before, but it's one of my favorites. This is my favorite TV commercial of all times. So picture the room. This is kind of 1980s, at least that's the way it frames in my mind. I think this might have been IBM, but I really can't recall, and I have not been able to find it on YouTube. So if you find it, $5 from me if you can find it, and send it to me. So picture this room, big boardroom, mahogany table, big high back leather chairs, a bunch of old suits, sitting around the table. Almost a smoke-filled room, but not quite. You can see it, right? So the chairman busted in the room, and you can tell this is just a curmudgeon of a man that had his better days, and he's just looking for something, to get irritated with. So he leans over to his right, and he says, I bet this is a software issue. You software guys can never get it right. Always just a drag on the organization. Software, you just letting us down again. Software. And the guy said, no, sir, boss. Software's not the issue. Okay, hardware. I knew it. Software's doing their part, and then hardware lets these guys down. These guys are working hard, doing their part, doing everything they can, and the hardware guys let them down. No, boss, no. It's not hardware. Network. You network guys are always dragging behind. These guys are doing everything they can. You're the ones that are letting them down. What do you have to say about that? No, sir, boss. Network's fine. Now he's really upset. If it's not software or hardware or network, why are we even in this meeting? Why are you wasting my time? And this nice little gentleman in the back raises his hand and says, shirts? What? Shirts? Did you say shirts? Yes, we're here to talk about shirts. You mean you called this meeting of all these executives to talk about shirts? Yes, we're a shirt company. It's what we do. And so the tagline was, hey, IBM or somebody, let us handle your IT needs. You do what you do best. So as we think back on WPX, we were really chasing a lot of interesting things that were not core to what we do as an organization. So that cultural piece was, guys, we're an oil and gas company. Let's figure out how to do this exceptionally well. And then every other piece of the organization needs to turn in and look and say, how can I help us drill wells better, complete wells better, produce more effectively, do things the right way? And there's so much. And all of a sudden, you have people pulling in the same direction to achieve that goal. I think that's one of the most fundamental, important decisions we made early on. And believe me, boy, every time, and I had people looking at me like, what are you even talking about? We make shirts, guys. We make shirts. And it was brought back to me many times after that, oh, Clay, we make shirts, right? Yep, we make shirts. It's what we do. Don't forget it. So some of those really early discussions were real fundamental. So here we're coming together. We have this fall in oil price. We're obviously entering a down cycle. And the problem with cycles is you never really know. Is this a 2-month, 3-month cycle? A 2-year, 3-year cycle? Or is this kind of a new norm? Because every one of them feels like, okay, now we've got something that's changed out there. Maybe this is lower for longer, new norm environment. How do we prepare for all of those things? So let's rewind back. I'll tell you a little bit more about my background and kind of join these two storylines together. So I grew up, my extended family's from Louisiana. My dad was high school educated. He was actually early on in his career a diver. Was in the Army, making a living in the oil and gas industry, doing underwater construction. It is a tough existence. He worked his way into different roles, and he was an entrepreneur at heart. I always say he's an amazing entrepreneur, and he was just a terrible businessman. Those two things kind of need to coincide, and boy, he had some really wild, crazy ideas, and we're going to do this, and it's going to be great, and never got around to making much money, so that was always a bit of drag on the family. My mom, a school teacher growing up, once she started raising kids, she stayed home with us, and it is just an amazing mom. I did get to introduce my mom to Kevin, and she still asks about Kevin. How's Kevin doing? So, don't worry, Kevin's doing fine. But anyway, you know, we moved to Houston. My dad was chasing a dream in Houston, 1981. And if you recall, 1981 was the beginning of another oil down cycle. A lot of people moved to Houston in 1981. And then there were no jobs to be found. And so it was a really, really tough time. I saw my dad go through some personal struggles. I like to think I'm a pretty keen observer. I think I learned a lot during that time. I had my mom in one ear and my dad in another ear. Dream big, son, dream big, swing for the fences. And my mom would just say, get a job, save your money, you'll be just fine. Just work every day, just get a job. Don't listen to him. Clay, go to bed. You got a test tomorrow. So we were in Houston. That's where I went to high school. Went on to get an engineering degree from A&M and then a master's from UT a few years later. I worked most of my career for Anadarko Petroleum. 16 years there, moved around several times. A really interesting opportunity, a really great company. I have a tremendous amount of respect, and I am forever indebted to what that company trained me and allowed me to do. The most important thing, most important opportunity and I guess thing I received from Anadarko was the mentorship. I had some amazing people I worked around, and I have still to this day, I don't know why they gave me so much time. I had people that had no business wasting their time with little old me, would call me up and say, hey, went to this program, I went to this training, I'd love to, you know, have lunch with you and tell you a little bit more about it. And I'm thinking, okay, you're the boss. Actually, you're my boss's boss's boss, but sure, let's go do that. I was always, you know, I just cherish those moments. And what I would encourage you to do is, you know, whatever that opportunity, however that opportunity presents to you, never take that for granted. That is, it was such an important time for me, and I learned so much. You know, wonderful people. And what I was really searching for, I didn't know at the time what I was searching for, but what I was really searching for was, who's that person that I want to emulate? Or better yet, who are the people that have characteristics and values that I want to emulate? And I'm, you know, had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with people that made a ton of money and had really cool titles and, you know, drove fancy cars or whatever their thing was. But the thing that just resonated with me time and time again was their relationship with their families and their relationships with others. And you could mention someone's name and you heard 5 people, man, what a great person. What an amazing individual. And I thought, that is how I want to be described. That is the characteristic. That's what I want to emulate. What drives that? How do you get to that? That's the cool position I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line. So I really listened quite a bit. Amazing friendships, amazing mentors, many of which I'm still very close to today. If my team only knew all of the lines that I've stolen from all of these other people and repeated back, they would realize that, wow, Clay's a really good parrot. I mean, he really remembers those lines well and can zing them right up. But I just so appreciate that time, and I never take that for granted. Kevin talked about some of the mentoring that I do, the time that I spend. I think it's one of the most important things for me as a person to serve. So I'll give you 2 lists. My first list is, and Ryan reminded me of this earlier, I have a list of 4 leadership characteristics, and I kind of keep this in my mental back pocket, and it's interesting to me how many times that you can use this, and you have to form your own list. This is, you know, you kind of your own thing. But what really drives you, in this case, as a leader? So this list came together. I had read a book, Halftime by Bob Buford, rocked my world in a big mental way. At the same time, I was leaving Anadarko, joining Newfield here in Tulsa, and one of the things that resonated with me was you have to figure out what drives you. How do you describe yourself? You're about to introduce yourself to a whole bunch of people that don't know you one bit. Inside Anadarko, 16 years, I'd built this great amount of goodwill. I could go to the CEO of the company and say, Jim, here's what I really need. Okay, Clay, let's figure out how to get it done. That takes 16 years to build. You throw all that away and you join a new company and you have no credibility. In fact, you're probably a half a step back because the organization feels like, we're working hard. We were here yesterday. You're just the new guy. What do you know about what's going on with us? So it was really important for me to establish, here's my introduction. So I had 4 things, and this is my leadership principles. Number 1 is integrity, okay, easy. Second, servant leadership. It's something that Jim Hackett at Anadarko embraced, espoused, talked about, and modeled in such an amazing way. I can't speak highly enough about that guy. He is just an amazing person. Servant leadership, I could give a whole nother talk on that one, by the way. Number 3 is value, and it's really value to the bottom line. Everything we do as an organization should have a value associated with it. And even some of the most tangential things that we do, how do you tie that back to creating value for the organization? Now, what's really cool about the word value, and I underline it, is it's also values. We have to do things with the right values, how we approach things. If we make a whole bunch of money and there's bodies in the street and people with terrible relationships and everybody behind us says we'd never do work with those guys again, not the way we want to live. That's not my style. That's not who I want to be, okay? Incredibly important. So once again, integrity, servant leadership, value to the bottom line, and then the last one is leave it better than you found it. Kind of a Boy Scout principle, you know. But that one I've used in so many ways as well. You think about the communities that we work in, the relationships that we form. I'm looking at John Lindsay over there. How do we make sure that whatever we enter into 6 months later, a year later, you know what, that relationship's better than we found it. You know, the roles that we sit in, somebody else is going to sit in my role after me. How do I make this role better than I found it? Everything we do, leave it better than you found it. So that's my 4 leadership principles. Now, very recently, I've been challenged to come up with, what do I really want to be remembered for? What really drives me as an individual? And I thought, well, I've got these leadership things, servant leadership, this. And I was like, no, that's not it. That's my leadership list. That's my principles of leadership, but what really drives me as a person. And so I go through an exercise around a weekly focus, and I spend time, 45 minutes or so, really thinking about how did I live these values, and I'll tell you these values in a second, and then what am I going to do in the coming week or weeks to really emulate these values. So these values are simple. Number 1 is faith, family, service, and then balance. Faith, family, service, balance. First 2, pretty easy, self-explanatory. Service, this kind of stuff. I love, if I can help anyone in this room just a little bit, serving. I've been so blessed by so many people investing in me that I am compelled to give back, service. Balance is an interesting one, and I actually have a coach I'm working with through this program, and she pushed back on balance. She's like, yeah, everybody's work-life balance, blah, 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 don't like it. I said, no, my balance is different. My balance is, I want to be a rancher, and I want to learn how to play the guitar, and I want to be a really cool dad that my boys like to hang out with. And, I bought horses. I didn't know I wanted horses. I'm not sure I do want horses, but I got horses now. I want to learn about cars. I want to read more. I saw something on TV the other day that PBS is putting together the list of 100 best American books of all time. I'm like, I got to do it. I got to read these books. The balance, to me, is kind of like a Renaissance man, just somebody that can. I'm interested in all things. I met a guy. It's probably 2 or 3 years ago. He had such an incredible passion for his hobby. Okay, I was compelled. We talked for 3 hours. This is at it was an industry event, a bunch of industry guys together. Me and this guy sit down, And he started telling me about this hobby that he has, and he is so fired up. I'm excited. Beekeeping. I didn't know anything about beekeeping. Now I do. And what? That's kind of cool. I mean, it was really, but you hear it around somebody's passion, like, man, that's really fascinating. So those are the kind of things, a balance, balance in life to me is all about, you could spend all day and all night working. You really could. In fact, you could spend all day and all night focusing on your family and no one else on the planet. You could, on some charity, on some hobby, on any one thing, and I would tell you that you've unfulfilled your life. I think there's so much more in life to just explore and to learn. So that's kind of my balance. So back to me, rewind back to, I go through Anadarko, and then I come here to Tulsa, and I joined Newfield, a company here in town at the time. And it was really about jumping out of the nest. I kind of had a little bit of too much comfort at Anadarko, and I had to learn, can I do this again? Am I going to just, did I have too much, essentially, goodwill at my prior company, and now this is, a real test for me? I can tell you, it worked out great. It was exceptionally hard. Some of the things I'm going to talk about with WPX, we went through the exact same process, and it was difficult, hard. I sleep generally very well at night. The nights that I do not sleep are all around people decisions. We have to close an office, we have to cut staff. That person that I work directly with, I have to have that tough conversation. Maybe I have to let that person go. I have to eliminate that job. Those are the things that just wear on me, okay? Making engineering type decisions, it fires me up. I can do that all day. It's exciting for me to talk shop. It wears on me to talk people. But I have a lot of passion around that, and I have a tremendous amount of passion around it being done right. And so I leaned hard, especially in the Newfield environment where we started, I guess I was there 2.5 years. We went from 450 employees to 250 employees. Not a fun place to be. I get a lot of mean looks in the hallways. I get, everybody's kind of whispering in the room, and then I walk in and it's silence. I experience all those things probably for the first year or so. And then when we make the turn and the team really comes together and you're really seeing that win, we rebuilt the organization around the Oklahoma assets. And for 2014, we were the #1 performing S&P 500 company. I can tell you, at that time, my team would run through a brick wall for me. It was so exciting to see the wins come together and really kind of form it together. So that's about the time that Rick called me, right? 2014, we're running along, everything's good. We've put all this hard work in. I have worked so hard to get the team together. Rally. Rick says, hey, we've got a great opportunity for you. I was like, oh, bud, I can't do it. I am so all in to this. I can't let my team down. Well, Rick's a very persistent person, and after I think maybe 10 or so breakfasts and lunches, and the magic words that he was saying around family and people and how he wanted to do it and his values, I saw once again that person that I could emulate. It's like, that's who I want to be when I grow up. That's it. That's the kind of person that, like I tell my kids all the time, you might as well surround yourself with good people, because you're going to turn out just like them. Good people, bad people, other people, funny people, whatever it is, they will rub off on you. Make sure you pick good people. So I took a dose of my own medicine, said, you know what, Rick, I think I'm in. And that's when the whole, the next chapter started. So we talk about courage to change. I think about two main topics of courage. And interestingly, the speaker before me talked about courage, and I agree with all that. Stole a little bit of my thunder, but I'll meander around that. I think about moral courage, the courage to stand up for your ethical beliefs. That's tough, okay? Moral courage. The other is managerial courage, and I'll talk more about that today. but it can be applied at any level in the organization. I just want to highlight some of the things that, as a leader, that focus, that energy, the pressure around making some of these decisions, it's incredible. So think about moral courage and think about managerial courage, okay? So let's go back to WPX. Quick wins. So we joined together. Hey, we got board 1,000% behind us. We got a new CEO. I'm new. Kevin Van, our CFO, is recently promoted. We've got a lot of momentum and excitement, and everyone is expecting change, right? So it's easy. That doesn't say easy wins. That says quick wins. And for a reason. Because early on, it was obvious to us we needed to do some things. We needed to sell some assets that were losing money every single month. Okay, guys, we can't afford to own this. These assets are making us broke. Let's sell it. Let's see if we can actually realize some money and then plow it into the right assets. I talked about the cultural changes. Incredibly, incredibly important to Rick, which resonated very well with me as well, that we need to build the company around here's what we do. There's so many other things that we thought about that were quick wins. If we're going to build this culture, we had essentially all of our technical staff in Denver, and we had our leadership and more of our back office staff in Tulsa. I told Rick, I said, well, looks like I'm going to spend a lot of time on the plane. He's like, I don't know if that's enough. I said, well, I didn't tell my wife, but I guess I could move to Denver. And he said, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I think we need to bring those guys here. I think we need to be under one roof. We can't create the culture twice or 3 times because we've got a field office or 4 times because another field office. You know, we need to bring the decision makers and the technical team and the heart of the organization as best we can under one roof. Fix it one time. Okay. Now we get to that managerial courage. So that decision's easy. I mean, if it was just the fact of, man, you add up the numbers, how much does it cost? What's the benefit? Pros, cons, check, check, check. Good, let's do that. Here's the part that kept me awake. You know, I know, graded on Rick as well. We had some amazing employees in Denver that I was 100% convinced there's no way they were moving to Tulsa. Nothing against Tulsa, you know, nothing against or nothing for Denver, but just family commitments. I had, you know, a case in point. I had a gentleman, just an amazing person, great worker, had been with the organization a long time, and asked to speak to me directly. And in tears, he told me how much he appreciated what we were doing. He was an early adopter and could tell that these decisions were so very important to the organization. But in tears, he told me about his sick parents, that he needed to stay in Denver, and he was no longer going to be with the company. Oh, man, ripped my heart out, okay? This was not this guy's decision, okay? He had done everything right, everything a company could want from this employee. He had worked hard. He was a forward thinker. He was all about, let's make this happen, right until we decide to rip the rug right from under his feet and say, look, if you want your job, it's in Tulsa. Oh, man, that's when you lose some sleep. The decision was the right decision, okay? But there's 100 of those kind of examples. Every one of the people that we affected have families. Sometimes it was easier. Hey, man, I'm single. I've got family in Tulsa anyway. Boom, I'm done. Sometimes it was what the story I just told you, and there was a million spectrums in between. But it was really a decision that I knew that we made for the best interest of the company, but was not only going to affect employees, but employees' families. Tough, really, really tough. So we make the decision. It's, you know, as you can imagine, the transition is difficult. There's things that we should have done differently. I would tell you one of the things that we did that we should have done differently was we gave a longer time period to make a decision. We gave a longer time period to make the move. We were very generous with the move benefits and very, very flexible, trying to encourage and be good, right? We want to be the good guys that say, wow, I so appreciate how flexible this opportunity is. You know, every action has an unintended consequence. What happened was it just caused stress in the organization because you had people saying, you know, I'm probably going to go, but I've got 2 months. So I've got to go interview down the street and, you know, think about these other options and really explore all of these scenarios. And so you had people that were feeling like, yes, I'm in, that, well, wait a minute, I guess if you're going to look, I guess I should be looking too. I didn't even think about going to a different company, but I, you know, probably should do that. And so we actually retreated back and we had to work through that. Very difficult time. Quick wins. Thinking about some of the asset sales early on. As I mentioned, some of these assets were actually losing money. It was apparent we had no future in this basin, in this business. We needed to cut bait. We needed to extract ourselves out of this troubled area, okay? Those are quick wins. But once again, you're affecting people. One of our newly formed employees, he rejoined us, was the leader of our Gillette, Wyoming office, okay? Awesome guy. You met him, you'd be like, man, what a great person, okay? Just one of those, and I heard that so many times. Man, Joe, he's such a great guy. Oh, Joe, he's a great guy. Joe, we're selling your asset. And by the way, it takes 2 years to sell this asset, so he has to live. And I tell you, smile on his face every single day, leading his employees, guys, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. I know we're getting sold, but you never know who's gonna buy us. It could be a better opportunity for all of us. In reality, whoever was gonna be buying was gonna be shrinking that office, and most of those people were gonna be losing their jobs, okay? That's leadership. That is moral courage. He knew it was the right thing to do, and managerial courage because it was his role and it was compelling to keep people looking forward. So Joe came to me, we find a buyer, comes to me in the end and says, you know what? He said, I have twin daughters. I made a commitment to them. We're not going to move them while they're in high school. But who knows, Clay? You know, maybe years from now they graduate. Maybe our paths cross again. I love what you guys are doing. I love the message. I love the culture that you're building. You know, I support you in every way. And I just thought, God, this guy's losing his job, you know, having been drugged through that incredibly difficult managerial role and still has that positive outlook to say, hey, we appreciate what you're doing. So fast forward a few years later, about 3 or 4 months ago, actually 6 months ago, Joe's daughters are coming up on high school graduation. We still had contacts with Joe. He said, hey, June 12th, I'm free man. We can move anywhere. One daughter went to West Point. The other daughter went to Washington, was it? Where? Wyoming. Daughters going different directions. Hey, we're free to move. Great. Let's see what we can do. We were able to find a role, reconnect into just a incredibly, you know, qualified and tremendous person. And I know his leadership style. So those are quick wins. Let's talk about the next section. Maybe not. Tough calls. Okay. So you start working through some quick wins, and then you get to more the tough call environment. These are kind of judgment calls. You know, these are assets that, you know, we probably still have too many assets. These assets are making money. They have opportunity. There's upside. Now the new leadership team has been in the role long enough that we are personally connected. I've got to know these people, got to know their families. Really tougher calls around, do we sell this asset? Parallel to that, it was very aware to us by this time that we needed a new crown jewel asset. We needed something that was going to carry us not just through the next year or two, but into the next decade or two. And so we went out really hunting. If you don't know much about our business, that's an incredibly difficult decision. Let me frame it up for you. You're charging a team with either go find something that no one has ever figured out and figure it out, or go find an opportunity that no one really values, that we can value, and have, by the way, keep a whole lot of upside, because we need to create the company value around this, okay? Incredibly tall order. So we searched the globe, not quite the globe, we want to stay in the U.S., but the U.S. globe, and we found a few opportunities, and we struck out on a few opportunities. But we were able to acquire a piece of property way early in the evolution of, is this really going to work or not? So there's a fair amount of risk. We acquire this, $2.75 billion. So we're pushing all the chips in. And it is apparent to us very early on, this is a grand slam. This is going to work, and not just work, this is a company maker. So now, commodity price still hasn't recovered. In fact, it's gotten worse. February of 2016, 8 months after we closed this $2.75 billion deal, we push all our chips in, and we watch oil price just fall down. Okay. No, it's all good. We're good. Don't worry about it. We're moving on. Let's go. Keep going. Here we go. I can tell you, inside the walls, well, we've got to pay for this. We have to figure out all of our debt metrics, the metrics that we're judged by. We knew that we were stressing the balance sheet. We didn't know oil price was falling even further and it was going to become really stressed. So what do? Now we have to make judgment calls on selling even more properties, and properties that, you know what, we kind of like. In fact, the Piceance Basin was our crown jewel asset of the company. This was WPX Energy. But this is what we need to sell to pay bills to fund this new basin entry. Tough call. Lots of people, lots of families, in a beautiful area of the country in western Colorado, just a gorgeous area. And you know what? This was a very well-run organization. Really good leadership, really good culture. Once again, all these people doing it right. You know, just what you want to see in a group of employees, and you can rally them up and say, okay, you know, we've got the right team, let's go, let's get this done. So we made that decision. Coincident to that, gas prices continuing to fall, so we're having a really tough time selling it. We get that deal sold. And then we look back to our new crown jewel asset, and it's just getting bigger and better, bigger opportunities, okay? Oil price starts to recover. We're now moving through 16. The tail end of 16, we're starting to get more stability. We've sold some assets. We've got our balance sheet now back in check. And this crown jewel asset that we've pushed all our chips into is now quickly becoming the hottest basin in the world. And we're sitting right in the heart of it. So, okay, we're not out of the woods yet. What do we need to do to really make the most out of this opportunity? Are there more assets to sell? Do we need to buy more? Do we double down? Oh, here comes another opportunity, $800 million deal, small $800 million deal. We've just, stared death in the face and survived. But wow, what a compelling opportunity that really would complement our existing business. And so we started looking at it and we're saying, wow, that would really fit very well. How do we live the balance sheet? How do we work through this? How do we turn this into a new opportunity? We're able to pull it off. And now, 2016, commodity prices starting to stabilize. And we're saying, you know what, in this environment, with our cost structure, all the great work that we've done to this point, we can make this work. We don't need anything else to change. We can just push forward. If we can figure out how to lock this in, let's go make this happen. So we started looking at potential derailers. What if? What if? What if? What if? How do we hedge this? Meaning that we lock in commodity price. How do we protect runaway inflation? Let's align with the right partners. You know, how do we think about other potential derailers that are nowhere even close to evident today, but let's stay ahead of it. I can tell you, a year and a half, 2 years, we were ahead of some of these big industry disruptors, and we locked those opportunities in place. Okay? Upon further review. So now you're moving into a phase where, kind of where we're at real time today. We've worked exceptionally hard. We've built a culture. We've rebuilt an organization. We have rebuilt a portfolio. About $8 billion of transactions in and out of the organization. It's a whole new company, okay? And we are so proud of the things that we accomplished, those early wins, that it's just, you know, you're still kind of a buzz. Man, I'm so happy we did that. That process we had, man, it was a disaster before. Because remember, it's so easy when you're the new guy to say, I don't know what that last guy was doing, but we need to fix it. Okay, fast forward to present. Now we are that guy, okay? So the managerial courage to say, you know what? We made that decision, but I think we need to revisit that decision. We formed that process, and you know what? At the time, man, thank goodness we did, because it was, you know, it was really bad before. We fixed it with duct tape and baling wire, and it's going to survive. But now, this is not the process that we need to build the new organization on. Let's go back and change it again. But we worked so hard. I have so much invested. I built my organization around this. I get it. We need to question it again. And seeing that and embracing that, question it again, is courage, okay? It's doing it the right way. And it's contagious. As your team sees you question, hey, look guys, I made that decision. This is the way we structured the organization. We need to blow that up. We need to change it and do it differently, because we're a different company now. We have different challenges. We've checked certain boxes that's allowed us to move forward. So that's the last thing I want to leave you with, is thinking about kind of that replay. That is some of the toughest decisions, to question yourself and question the decisions that you've made, and really made such a big deal about, wow, this is going to be great. I need everybody to buy in. This is going to be so important for us. And then to be able to, within a few years, say, and now we need to change it, rethink about it. Maybe it's different now. Or, guys, it was wrong. Didn't work out. We appreciate all the effort we poured in, but we pushed when we should have pulled. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys today. Congratulations on the 15 years. I'm so proud of this. What you guys have accomplished, 48,000 people. Sorry that I'm not an NBA star. I thought you guys might thought I was, just from my stature, but sorry to disappoint. Anyway, I appreciate it. I also appreciate Sherry Nelson, the work that she does for WPX. Thank you, Sherry, for what you do for WPX, and then also for the organization. And Travis, thank you very much for your leadership and all you do for the organization as well. With that, thank you guys.
I have some gifts for you here as well.
Okay. Okay.